All right. So my name is Raleigh Carter, if you don't know that already. And it's like 1:30, no, 1:04 in the morning. So if my voices sound funny, that's the reason why. Um so I guess to start the conversation about gymnastics and coaching, man, there's so much to cover. And it's like, where do you start? I think a couple things to keep in mind when it comes to coaching gymnastics is that there's many different aspects of what you need to understand and then how you're going to bring them together. Example would be, you may have heard the idea, and I think this is the other thing about gymnastics that doesn't get clearly communicated is there's a lot of philosophy that actually goes beyond the sport, and there's a lot of these cliche kind of, I don't know, really anecdotes, maybe is the correct word, I'm not sure, um, of how people communicate about gymnastics that's just not true. And so, an example is that everybody learns differently. Okay, so there's this idea that I need to come up with another way to teach a drill or a skill, drill a skill basically, because my athlete can't learn the way I'm teaching them. All right, so I'm going to rephrase that again is there's this idea that if my athlete cannot learn a skill or a part of the skill or a concept in the skill the way I'm teaching them, that I must come up with another way. And that's not true. It's actually not. The physicality of the skill actually is the least important aspect of the skill. So usually you see this with drills. Like there's 1,000 different ways to teach a cartwheel, and yet all cartwheels look the same. So it's not like there's 1,000 ways to do a cartwheel. There's really only a couple, depending on how you enter and exit the cartwheel. But for the most part, the mechanics of a cartwheel is pretty straightforward. So the idea that you're going to teach a cartwheel 1,000 different ways, use a panel mat, use a wedge, use a little cartwheel hand block, use some cartwheel hands on a vinyl mat, use a line, use a wall, use some pit cubes, use some whatever, right? Like just fill in the blank. Um, there's so many. Oh, should I put my this hand down first or that hand down first? Should I look this direction or that direction? It's like people have overcomplicated it so much, and they're not actually teaching gymnastics anymore. What they're actually doing is entering the sport in a way that they want validation for their intelligence. And then they're teaching kids who will go, wow, you're so amazing. Thanks, coach. You helped me figure this out. When in reality, that child who is doing gymnastics probably still will never achieve what their true potential is because the coach has a fundamentally flawed view on how people learn. Okay? We do not learn so differently from each other that we're like unique space aliens. And I think this is very, very important to understand. For instance, we all have the ability to smell. And I'm just talking average, normal, baseline people, not people who have anomalies where they can smell colors or something like that. So we all have the ability to smell. All right, so when we smell, we can learn through smells. Basically you have to keep in mind our ability to take in information only exists so that we can communicate with other people, but you can't communicate information with somebody unless they agree with you. So you can't say, I smell strawberries, and then tell somebody that information and them not agree with you unless they also smell strawberries. I mean, if you go, I smell strawberries and they smell dog crap, you're not smelling the same thing. But if to them strawberry smells like dog crap, you're going to have a giant miscommunication. And that is not how our senses work. We physically feel relatively the same information for the most part, tactile, um, whatever, pressure, our sensory ability to feel things, internal G forces. We all are experiencing relatively enough, close enough, the same experience that we can communicate it in such a way that we can produce repeatable results. We all can hear, we all can speak, we can smell, we can see, we can feel. And so the data input is going in people, for the most part, 99.9% of the time, is getting interpreted pretty close to the same way. Now, the what you are downloading into the person and how they're interpreting it, might be different, but the input is relatively the same way. And so when you understand the proper steps to input data in a person, it's really not like 1,000 ways to learn. It's actually much less, and it's very straightforward and simple. And so I'm going to break some ideas down for you, so you can understand that you can gain control of teaching gymnastics a lot faster than setting up 1,000 different ways to teach a cartwheel. So there's some ideas, and I mean, you can dig deeper on this if you really want to, but the idea of encoding, consolidation, and recall. So encoding is the process of taking in the information. Consolidation, from what my understanding of internet research is, consolidation is kind of a little bit of a vague area where some people are like, it's the idea that if you sleep on it, you're going to have a better chance of remembering it. But it's kind of that process that a memory goes from short term to being long term. I read an article that it says it takes about a minimum of 4 hours for a short-term memory to become a long-term memory. So if you're thinking about the idea that you're going to give somebody a piece of information and then you want to know if they're going to embody that information, you're actually going to have to wait a period of time. There's a rest period, just like working out. There's a rest period, and you're going to turn that short-term into a long-term memory. You're going to wait that rest period, and then you're going to check it, and that's the recall. And it's like, what do you remember? If they don't remember all the information you gave them when you encoded it, it's like we have a culture in America where you're considered an idiot or dumb or stupid or lazy, or as if you're not paying attention because you can't recall 100% of the information. And so there's this idea around being right. And I have to work on this so much with these athletes because they go to school and it's all about being right instead of about being honest. And the honest answer is to say, I don't recall anything. I don't remember anything. Because as a teacher or a leader or a coach, it's better to have an honest baseline than someone to pretend like they know something. And then you build momentum off of this false idea. So you need to actually know what your athletes do not know so that you can fill in the gaps so you can actually build off it. And it might sound like, oh yeah, no duh, I should know this. But honestly, if you listen to yourself speak and other coaches speak, how often do coaches say, does everybody understand? And the kids all nod their head, yes, I understand. And then the coach moves on. When in fact, it's easier to say, I understand, than it is to say, I don't understand. So nobody ever questions the honesty of the athlete's answer. I've gone to elite training camps. Okay, I've gone to high level 10, 9, 10 training camps. I've coached athletes, and I've listened to coaches talk, high level coaches, national ranked coaches talk to athletes, and they go, does everybody understand? And all the kids say yes. And it's like guaranteed there's a couple kids who are not doing anything close to what they were told. And it's like they didn't understand. They weren't paying attention, and nobody caught that. And so here we're going towards teaching to the kids who are just smarter or just naturally get it more, and the kids who don't ask good enough questions are the ones who get left behind. And it's not a physicality issue, that's a mentality issue. So there's kids out there, girls, boys, doing gymnastics who are not able to unlock their potential because they don't actually know how to answer the or ask the right questions, or they don't know how to be honest. And so they might have the physicality, but they don't have the mentality for the sport. And so then they get left behind. And it's interesting to me that coaches would be more willing to overlook this problem and cater to the kids who just get it than actually build a culture where we give honest answers, and the right thing to do is to raise your hand and say, I don't understand. And it doesn't matter who you're talking to, doesn't matter what the environment is, doesn't matter what the circumstances. If you're asked, do you understand, and you don't, the correct answer is, I don't understand. And looking stupid is worth it to get better. Looking foolish is worth it to get better. But there's this fear or something that stops people from being honest. And so going back to how do people learn, we learn relatively the same way. We download information into our brain. It's a short-term memory, and we convert it to a long-term memory. And what that process actually looks like, it seems like pretty complex and not very well understood. But hey, you can educate me if you know more of the details on this. But there are steps, and it's a cycling, it's a process that you have to kind of go over and over again. This idea that muscle memory exists, it's like that's not real. There's no such thing as muscle memory. Your brain can myelinate so that you can have better motor skill movements, but it's not like your muscles actually have memory. If we're talking about their reflex is just a response that happens automatically, and it's not really a memory. And so the more you do something, it's not like you're building memory in your muscles. You're literally building memory, like building a pathway in your brain. And I think it's important to understand how powerful your brain actually is, so you just don't think it's by happenstance. Like, if I do 100 backflips correctly, I'll backflip correctly. No, you won't. Another really, really frustratingly dumb saying that makes absolutely no sense. And I hope you have an openness of thinking to hear this, but it's been said that practice makes perfect. And then somebody came along and wanted to be really smart and pat themselves on the back for being so intelligent. And so how many of you have heard, no, it's not practice that makes perfect. It's perfect practice that makes perfect. All right, you really hit the nail on the head. No, it's not perfect practice that makes perfect, because nobody's perfect and nobody practices perfectly. So that's the stupidest goal to ever try to achieve. Okay, well, it's not perfect. I know one gentleman who's very knowledgeable in the sport, and I think he's right in some capacity. And he says, well, we shouldn't be pursuing after perfection. We should be pursuing after accuracy. Okay, true. We should be pursuing after accuracy. But are we like avoiding the elephant in the room that everybody starts off doing gymnastics like crap? Like, nobody's even close to accurate. Nobody's even close to perfect. We're not even having that conversation when little Timmy walks in the room and all he wants to do is run around like a crazy dinosaur and terrorize the place. Like, that's not close to accurate or perfect. And you're saying, okay, well, we're going to work towards accuracy. Accuracy of what? Like, what is there to be accurate about? That's what I'm saying is the starting point. Like, the legitimate starting point of learning is like chaos, like incredible amounts of chaos. So to even think, it's just mind blowing to me even right now, like to even think that the starting point has any form of order to it. And you go to kids, I mean, my sister has a PhD in English and she's a professor, and she teaches college people. And she's like, these kids are dumb. You know, not really. That's not what she says about them. She says nicer things, but in all essence, it's like they don't even know how to communicate or set up meetings to say they need help. And you think an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10, oh, you're in fifth grade, so you should know something? Know what? Literally, like, know what? What are you supposed to know how to do in fifth grade? Like, maybe, I don't know, make sure you brought a pencil to class? Like, what are you supposed to know? I mean, sure, these kids eat up information and spit it out like they're a little database, but it's like entirely worthless if they don't have integrity or some sort of morality or some sort of value system. All they're trying to do is get accolades and praise. I mean, you don't hear people, some kid being like, Mom, Dad, did you know unicorns aren't real? And they don't say that because they're trying to contribute to the conversation, as if you're in some sort of bind going, oh no, I don't know what I should do. Take a job working for the unicorn factory, or if I should go work with Bigfoot as his personal trainer. It's not like the kid's like entering the conversation going, Mom, did you know unicorns aren't real? I mean, they're not really contributing to life in any sort of meaningful manner, in the sense of the knowledge that they're giving. Like, who cares how many planets are rotating around the sun, and who cares that you if you divide 3 by 2, you get not a whole number. It's like, where are we actually starting the learning from? What are you actually expecting? Do these kids actually know how to listen? Do they actually know how to ask questions? Can they actually critically think? No, they can't. They just regurgitate information and do what they're told because it's like an authoritarian society. It's like they're so used to being told what to do and following orders. They don't even learn how to develop autonomy. They don't even have, a lot of them don't even have self-esteem. No one's building them up. They're getting ego, and they're becoming more about themselves than they are actually gaining confidence within themselves. And so they want the praise, but they don't actually have any value to bring to the table to say, hey, look what I can contributing. And when you rob somebody of their ability to contribute to the group, it's impossible to build self-esteem. I mean, I've definitely messed up a million times as a gymnastics coach, leader, teacher, trainer, because I failed to build up the character, the morality, the values inside my athletes. And so it didn't matter how much we overcame struggle, because they didn't have any self-worth. They didn't feel valuable. In fact, I would almost argue to say that I created a system, a structure where the value came from their success. And success in gymnastics is like 0%, because it doesn't matter what success you accomplish. There's always a harder skill to learn. There's always another step. So it's really hard to sit in your success in gymnastics. I mean, the struggle is real. You're not making level 4 skills happen and people are like, you've arrived, yay, no more having to work on level. It's like, no, you get level 4 skill and it's like, make it perfect. Or you get a level 4 skill and they're like, you got to get a level 5 skill. I mean, there's really no room to really sit there and be like, you're successful. So if your value is built on this type of structure, if that's where you get your self-worth from, I mean, you're going to be completely empty. And no wonder why you're going to quit gymnastics by the time you're 13, 14, 15. Like, that sucks. So how people learn is like really rooted into the starting point of how people should be learning at the very base element. I mean, an example, I mean, this is really how you teach gymnastics without being stressed out and frustrated and burnt out and overwhelmed and scratching your head on how to solve problems. Okay, I'll give you some brief, simple examples. An athlete comes up to me and says, Raleigh, what should I do today? Well, what's wrong with you? Why are you coming up? Where's your group? Why aren't you with your group? Well, I hurt my foot playing capture the flag, and Now I can't do anything and they're on vault, so I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Okay, I give this athlete an assignment. Here's your assignment. Here's your things to do. Next day, athlete comes up to me. Raleigh, what should I do? What do you mean, what should you do? Well, I have a hurt foot. Okay, well, do you remember your assignment from yesterday? Well, yeah. Okay, well, go do that assignment because that's your rest, rehab, recovery. I hurt my foot assignment. Next day happens. Athlete comes up to me. Raleigh, what should I do? What do you mean, what should you do? Yeah, they're tumbling. I can't tumble. Well, have you done your assignment today? What you did yesterday? Well, no. Well, go do that, but I don't want to do that. Well, it's not my job to find your solution to your problem because you messed your ankle up playing capture the flag. Like, it's not. Take some responsibility. If you want to go to school and you want to roll your ankle and you want to mess it up and then you want to come to gym and you want me to figure out how to solve your problem, no. That's not my job. I gave you a solution. You're welcome. Now you need to go carry it out because that's not my problem. I've got 11 other athletes who are healthy that I need to spend my time with and that you're taking. Now, this did not make this gymnast feel very happy, and I didn't say it exactly like that, but I'm bringing up the severity of the situation is how you can get your time taken advantage of so quickly. Because the truth of the matter is that if you're not teaching those athletes, I mean, I don't know what the ratios are, but if you're doing 10 to 1, let's just say we're being generous, 10 to 1 ratios, I mean, it's 10 people to 1. Like, what type of impact are you really going to have on 10 people? You're not. You're not. You don't even hang out with 10 friends on a regular basis and feel like you actually connect with them. Go hang out with 10 people and see how connected you feel to all 10 of them. Like, it's a hard thing to do. And so you're going to put your time and energy into the kid that's learning the fastest, or you're going to put your time and energy into the person that drives you crazy because they talk so much or they make so much chaos and you've just got to solve it by default. But that's not a system. That's not a strategy that involves everyone to work together and grow together, and by default, everyone gets better. That's a pick and choose, show up from one day to the next. Susie's doing really well today. Sarah's doing really well the next day. Stephanie's doing even better. And so then your energy just goes from ding, 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 ding to different people, but you're not actually developing these kids into becoming better human beings that can learn faster so that they can become better gymnasts. And so let's not fool ourselves that teaching to somebody's strengths isn't actually teaching. They were going to learn that whether you were going to teach it to them or not. I coached an athlete who, despite my inability to coach, took first place at every single meet, except states where he took second. And then he took first place at regionals. It was my first year ever coaching gymnastics competitively. It was his first year ever competing gymnastics competitively. We swept the field. I literally only had one competitive athlete, and we swept it. First year. That was my exposure to gymnastics. I thought I knew what I was doing. I knew nothing. I thought I knew what I was doing. And so here I have an athlete who would have learned how to do this without me because of his ability to want it so bad and learn. And yet I thought I was contributing. Don't fool yourself. Don't think you're actually contributing to the system. The smart kids are already going to get it. They're going to. You don't need to try so hard for the smart kids. The smart kids need to try harder. And the kids who are struggling are the ones who need to learn to ask better questions. They don't need to go through drill 592 to get the skill. They just don't know how to think. They can't correlate. They don't understand how to control their emotions. And so, it's like we don't need to be breaking down skills to 700 million different little pieces trying to figure it out. It really doesn't have to get boiled down that small. the danger that gymnastics coaches run into is something called, uh, it's kind of like what, well, I don't know, I want to call it this, but it relates a lot to fractals. And that's really what scalability is. I mean, the idea that you can take a measuring system, let's say like a mile, and you can chop it up into smaller measurements. You could chop it up into feet. Then you can chop a mile up into inches. And then you can chop a mile up into centimeters and millimeters and nanometers. Like you can just get smaller and smaller, right? So measuring something has the ability to scale. Well, that's all a gymnastic skill is little pieces coming together to make big pieces. And so you can keep chopping those pieces up into smaller and smaller pieces, like a cartwheel. It has a lever, and then it has a reach for the ground, and then there's a kick, and then there's a twist of the hips, and then there's a foot placement. And you know what? And you don't need to teach that to the smart kids. It's the kids that struggle that you need to teach it to, but that's not actually what you need to be teaching them. Because that's actually not hard. It's like dance hands. It's like having proper finger positions for women's gymnastics. You know, it's not actually a hard thing to do to ask somebody to have correct hand positions. The physical difficulty of it actually is pretty easy. It's the fact that you have to stay mentally engaged in the process to keep it going. And most people do not want to stay mentally engaged with their fingers. They don't care. They're not thinking about it. It doesn't matter to them. But the actual difficulty of engaging your fingers is not very hard. So the idea that we give up on getting people to put in the work and the effort on things that are easy, that aren't actually hard, shows that we're overcomplicating the system. Because then we take these things that are not that hard and we all are suddenly like, well, let me come up with 17 drills on how to solve the problem. I'm just kind of ranting and just letting you know where my mind is. So here's my conscious unload that's going on. It's 1:30 in the morning, so I'm going to end this. But I hope you gathered some information, or at least it sparked some questions. The most important mental journey I have found that a person should go on is getting to know the unknown better. It's like, what questions should I ask? I don't know anything about whatever the subject is or where this conversation is going. So what should I ask? What is the question that should be asked? And that's kind of how I feel about starting my Facebook group. Is I don't know what questions should be asked to engage people. I don't know what I need to put out there to actually get more followers and people to understand that I really do have a genuine, sincere desire to change the community of gymnastics from this just mindless vomit that people just throw up these crazy ideas and then they're so quick to want to insult one another, or they're so quick to want to be right or pat on the back for being smart. And the people who are suffering are the kids and the younger coaches who are just getting just, I don't know, I feel like people just get so taken advantage of in the sport. I know I got taken advantage of a lot. I did not know how to value my time and my self-worth. And now that I'm a business owner and I work with developing my, I don't even want to call them employees because I think it's just so stupid. It's like a power struggle. I work with people and I help them achieve their goals, their personal goals, by helping them understand how to create client retention and bring value to a company. We work together to actually create value together, and it's awesome. And I want that success for more people in the gymnastics community because I feel like gymnastics actually should be the dominant sport in the United States and the world. But the reason that it is not is because the education is incredibly poor. And there's either this incredible overcomplication of it, or there's this entire lack of interest to understand the fundamental principles of gymnastics and actually how easy it is. I'm going to leave you with this last thought. Is at a elite select whatever training camp. It's just for kids who want to train to go elite. You know, had people there that most people in the national circuit would know. Anyways, I was listening to one of the coaches, the beam coach, and she said something and it just clicked inside my head, and I'm like, there's no such thing as a difficult skill in gymnastics. There's literally no such thing as a difficult skill in gymnastics. Can you imagine that? There's actually no such thing as a difficult skill in gymnastics. Why? Because if you have the physical, mental, and emotional preparation to do the skill, it's actually not difficult. Now, think about that for a second. Riding a unicycle is not difficult when you already know how. People get wowed by what Simone Biles does, or Koei Uchimori. I probably pronounced his name wrong. Um, and it's actually not difficult for them because they're successful. And when you can do gymnastics successfully, the difficulty actually decreases. Now, that's not all jump off our chairs at once and try to, strangle me because I sound like a crazy person. Again, your emotional, mental, and physical preparation have to be in alignment to the need of the skill. And so if you are lacking, then yes, it is difficult. But why would you do a skill if you're lacking? And that's what most people's fatal flaw of coaching is that their athletes are lacking the physical, mental, or emotional preparation for the skill. And then the coach just digs in deeper, trying to find another drill to find the solution for the skill instead of looking at the person and saying, wow, you're just really bad at asking questions. And if you could think, you would just do it. If you could control your emotions, you'd get up on that beam and you'd throw that skill. If you were physically prepared, you could just do the kip, because kips aren't actually that hard, and it's not actually a giant coordination problem. Kips are more about strength than they are for coordination and rhythm and learning how to bend the bar and learning your correct shapes. But 99% of the time, if you look at any of those videos where people are like, why can't my athlete do a kip? It's like, because they can't do a leg lift. And if they could do 10 leg lifts from horizontal in a row, you'd probably be better off in the kipping world. Preparation. How do people learn? What is the foundation that you're building off of? And if you try to get ahead, I mean, this is why kids quit gymnastics. There's no reason to quit the sport of gymnastics if you're physically prepared. It just doesn't make any sense because it's fun and you're actually getting better. And winning is about getting better every day. It's not necessarily about winning competitions. So if you're looking into winning, winning should be a byproduct of the process. And that should mean that you go into the gym and you're like, okay, this is what I need to get better at. And then you get better at it and then you win. That's what winning is. But how many of us go into a gym and we just don't get better at something? And that's it. We just walk into the gym. We do stuff, we do work, we get busy, we get tired, we get exhausted. But if you were to measure that and say, did you get better? Did you actually improve compared to where you were yesterday? And if the results were like, no, then what was the point? I just told my athletes today, I said, if you're going to do splits wrong, you're better off just pulling out a piece of paper and coloring in it. There's just no point. Don't sit in your splits and sit in your splits wrong. You're just wasting time. What are we accomplishing? Like literally nothing. Gymnastics sucks. It's a hard sport. And you're going to go sit in your splits wrong. That's what you want to do with your time? Like go play video games. Go eat Jello. Go do something else more productive than sit in your splits wrong. It's far too painful and boring to do it wrong. So if you're really gonna take up the torch of coaching, I just encourage you to engage in the conversation Start asking the questions that you don't know. Start asking the questions that sound dumb. Start asking the questions to really lay down the foundation of where you're at. Because if you don't know how to teach a double layout on floor, if you don't understand how Arabian double front flips work, if you don't understand the hazards of teaching certain skills, if you don't understand the difference between why you want to land backwards or forwards, if you don't understand how release moves work on bars, and you can't look at gymnastics and see how a switch leap and a triple full on floor have the same blocking principle on the floor. If you don't understand that, then you really don't understand the sport. And that's the stuff you need to start figuring out and start learning and start having a conversation about. And then if you got kids who are rolling their eyes and big sighs and flopping on the ground because they're frustrated and not taking their job seriously and laughing about things that shouldn't be funny and getting scared emotionally, somebody falls off the beam and they do that whole thing. It's like, you can't do that. And they're emotional reactive. You can't. You got to stop the emotional reactions. And if you got kids who can't ask questions and they can't think and they can't problem solve, oh, so and so said this to me and it hurt my feelings and blah, 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 and all they want to do is stir up drama, you can't do gymnastics. You got to solve that problem. And if you don't know how to solve that problem, there's like nothing else to be done. Like, your team culture is the driving force of where you will go as a gymnastics coach. Your team culture. If you don't have a team culture that is founded in some core values that are stronger than the lack of knowledge you have, you're screwed. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have if your team culture sucks. And I can tell you, I've seen some coaches who are very knowledgeable and their team culture sucks. I've had a crappy team culture. Oh my goodness. We used to go to my boss at the time. She's now my business partner. I'd go up to her and be like, I'm quitting today. I can't handle it. And I had girls, saying the F word in their leotard, like, just making jokes because they could say words in their leotard. That's what they'd rather do than do anything. And I had no idea what I was doing. So, I mean, that's what you get thrown into, is a bunch of silliness and stupidness. And there's a lot of screwing up that goes on, and the idea that there's this perfect world where all the coaches actually know what they're doing, we don't know what we're doing. And I think that's a very dangerous and scary thing to say, and you would think that there needs to be some sort of education program or certification program, but there's not. And so that's why I'm working on what I'm working on, because I'm actually developing the process to say, hey, this is what you need to know to actually be a successful, happy, healthy coach that's going to produce happy, healthy athletes, that creates retention, and you can monetize it and bring value to yourself and actually make a living off of your successes, because your athletes will be successful because you'll be producing successful humans, and in turn, successful humans become successful gymnasts. My name's Raleigh Carter. I'm signing off. I'm going to bed. Y'all have a good night.